Hello and welcome to the Art Workshop. I'm Christopher Epling. Really appreciate you tuning in today. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're checking this out on YouTube, please subscribe. That would help out so much to the channel and to my efforts here. Basically what I'm doing is putting together a workshop for students covering various topics of art. I'm an illustrator and a cartoonist, so I get a lot of questions on what types of tools did I use to create certain things, how do I approach certain mediums, and even how I get my designs down and approach from a concept, which is just an idea, to a finished graphic, cartoon or illustration. So how does that process work? And that's something that we focus on. So hopefully by sharing information and the process that at least I take on certain things, some students are able to gather some ideas and better equip themselves with tools that they might need to approach certain topics. Now I do have a question that come in through Facebook, and I appreciate this question a whole lot. This comes in from a student at Belfry High School, and she's asked me what are some of my inspirations for cartooning, what are certain things that I like to read a lot whenever I'm trying to relax or maybe gather some ideas. So I'm going to cover that right now in just a second. But first I want to encourage everyone, please, if you haven't been to my website, go to my website, check it out. It's ChristopherEpling.com. Today we are going to be looking at some of my inspirations, my influences, and then on top of that we're going to take a basic design and figure out how do we take just an idea from an idea to a finished graphic or a cartoon character. So you're going to follow along with me on that today. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you're ready to get started. Okay, so I thought a good way for us to begin is by looking at all of the amazing and wonderful reference pictures that we have available to us at our fingertips. And we're looking at a rooster. Now roosters are interesting looking creatures I should say, but the character that we're going to create based on a rooster is going to have the features that you see. So we're going to include certain things that you look for. The beak, the crown I guess you'd call it, the different feathers, the structure of the feet and the body, and then the tail of the feathers coming off the tail. All of these things are things we want to look at, and as an illustrator or graphic designer you have these options available to you to go and look for reference pictures. Back in the day people had to go out and look at a rooster or take pictures of a rooster. You can also search for illustrations of a rooster, drawings of a rooster, cartoons of a rooster. You'll get all kinds of different results. Now this is where we want to talk a little bit about art being inspired by art and artists and other art that you see. We don't want to cheat and steal and copy other people's work. That's not what art's about. But however, a rooster is a rooster is a rooster. So how many times you draw a rooster, it's going to look similar to a rooster. Although you can draw that rooster in different ways and in different methods, such as this with all these pointism as we call it, or dots as you see making up the inside of a silhouette of a rooster. Then there's the basic cartoon rooster, and then look at this. This is pretty cool. This is a vector rooster. So all these images are just vectors, so that means they're shapes, so they're triangles. So all of these things that we see are things that we can use and pull from for inspiration. Okay? Now that's a big thing with art, is that you have to be subjective in the terms that you look at stuff and you see it and you get inspired by it and it helps motivate you or gives you ideas, but we don't want to steal, right? So earlier we had a question about what I like to look at to be inspired, and there's no doubt one of the most enjoyable things that I like to look at is the creation by Bill Watterson, a cartoonist from Ohio, Calvin and Hobbes. A lot of you probably already know Calvin and Hobbes from newspaper and books that you would see, collection of the comic strips. But this is a comic strip that ran for pretty good, I think it's almost like 20 years maybe not that much, but I'm not really sure exactly. But however, Bill Watterson created these amazing characters using these simple lines. I'm a big ink fan, brushes and nibs and things, so seeing how he created these basic shapes to make up characters in his stories, I think are always so interesting. Just look at the hair, the brush strokes making up the hair, just a series of triangles. So anytime that I want to be inspired, I look at Bill Watterson's work. I love how he can show action and animation just through, the movement of the inside the panel. He does a great job with that. So the story is based on Calvin, which is a little boy, and Hobbes, which is the tiger, and they go on adventures together. And as you can see, a lot of times Calvin is having these daydreams about flying spaceships, or sometimes he gets attacked by dinosaurs, all this cool stuff that he incorporates into his comic strip, and all the action and wonderful scenes that you see, all created simply with a nib pen and a brush. So I think it's mostly with the brush, but this is what we want to look at and get kind of an idea of our rooster with this simple look, with these simple lines, inspired by some of the things that we saw earlier, which are actual pictures of a rooster. Now we're using ink today. I brought a few examples. Now this is a Sumi ink. It's a Japanese ink. It's sort of thick. I like this ink, but if you use a brush with it or a nib pen, nibs, you dip in the ink over and over. You have to clean it. You have to be aware of that. Speedball is another brand. This is sold just about anywhere. You get office supplies. You can dip your ink into Speedball and use it just as well as the Japanese fancy stuff. Well, there's a ton of other types. This is a Deleter black ink. This came in a set. Ink comes in different types of thickness and grades of color, so that's something you got to be aware of. What I like to do is see what other artists are using. Higgins makes a really nice ink. You get it in various colors. This is a brown, and you know, you can play around with the colors. This is the color here of this ink, and you can use different inks to do different types of cartoons and characters using various styles, such as Bill Watterson. Now the cool thing about it is they also make white ink. You might say, well, why in the world do you need white ink for? Well, this is great for whenever you make mistakes with ink, because you can't erase ink, right? But if you can't get any of the fancy stuff, this is what I like to use. A little bit of white out. That covers most of your mistakes wonderfully well. In fact, it looks like I've even used black over the white out there a little bit. Don't know how that happened, but it does. Now, one more little tip is if you have a contact lens case you're not using, you can fill this up with ink, put the lid on, and you can take it with you wherever you go. You can bring your nib along or your brush, and you can pull ink from there and sketch on the road or on the go. It's a wonderful little bit of a tip to use if you're interested. You know, everybody mostly has access to a case for contact lens, so there you go. So the tools I'm using today, it's going to be a nib. This is a nib. That's what we mean by a nib. It's the metal part. This is the nib holder, which is wooden. They use these a lot in calligraphy, so you can get drawing nibs as well. We're also going to be using this brush pen. All it is a simple brush, but it has an ink reservoir in here, so you have to refill it. You don't have to keep continuously dipping it over and over. Now if you like brush pens, and that's what Watterson used, was a typical brush. He used a sable brush. I think it's a Winsor Newton maybe or something, but there's different sizes of brushes. That's something you have to be careful for. But if you want to purchase one of these pens that you refill, it's a brush pen. I noticed that some brands, such as this one, is a little more thick tip than the red pen here. And as for the brands, this is Pentel, and I think this is Kuretake, or Kuretake. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it right offhand, but that's the brand names. You have to be careful though, because I purchased this giant massive brush pen at one point thinking it was a great idea, but you can see the tip is massive. So this is great for coloring in large sections of black, but if you're going to draw on a small scale, you have to be careful. We're also going to be using a Faber-Castell. This is an artist pen. It's called a warm gray. It just makes a simple grayish tone, so you could put a little bit of gray into your drawing. And then we're also going to be using a water pen for a little bit of watercolor to put on our rooster at the end. So that's our tools we're using. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and get started. I forgot to mention, we're also going to be using a blue pencil. This is a non-photo blue lead. It's sort of hard to pick up. I hope it will show starting out, but we'll trace over this in pencil. So the first thing I want to do is draw simple shapes. It's going to give me an idea of the shape of our rooster. Okay. Now I'm going to characterize mine a little bit. I'm going to blow up some features on it. His tail will be coming back like this, sticking back. So I like to design, just scribble a little bit, get some ideas on what it's going to look like before I start. Then after I have the idea in mind, then I'm going to go back and add some features to it. So you can see he has his goblet there and his little crown, and we'll give him a t-shirt. We'll put a t-shirt on our rooster, and put something funny as a design up here for the t-shirt. Maybe a chicken leg on his t-shirt. Well, we're even going to give him a little chain wallet going back to his shorts. He's got to have shorts on. Come on. So this is my basic idea for the design. So after I scribble it in blue and sketch it out a little bit, then I'll go back and pencil, and I may trace over, kind of refining, getting some ideas on what I'm going to do. The whole time I'm doing this, I'm just lightly sketching. I'm not trying to make this a perfect design at first. This is just to basically guide me later on what it is I'm going to be creating, and it helps me to understand where lines will go, and it helps me to understand what shape it's going to be. So planning your drawing is always a good thing. You can plan and plan and plan, and know exactly what it is you're going to do before you ever start actually putting pencil on paper. So this is kind of the idea that I have for our rooster. It's a simple sketch design. It's nothing really too elaborate. So now that I know about what I'm going to do, I'll go ahead now and start. So using my reference over to the side now, looking at it, continuously thinking about what it's going to look like, I go in then and I start to draw. Now one of the things I want to be aware of here is that these circle methods that I use, I'll go ahead and draw it in pencil first so you can see it easier. This is going to be erased at the end once I have my design. So I'm going to draw an oval at the top for his head, and then his body's going to be much wider. So I'm going to draw this Hershey Kiss shape here for the body, like this. Then I'm going to draw a circle at the bottom, which is going to be where his pants will be, or his shorts. We'll have a couple of legs sticking out here. His feet come down like this. And then on the back, we're going to bring this up. This will be where his shirt will be. This is one of his wings, and then his tail coming back. Notice I'm just slightly sketching, getting some designs here, some ideas, and the whole time I'm doing this, I'm thinking about or looking at my first drawing, the design that I had in mind for the first sketch of the little rooster. That helps to guide you, right? So it gives you a framework to go by. So I'm just simply sketching this out a little bit. I'm going to put his t-shirt and the sleeve of his shirt on him. And of course the tail coming up. Now his pants will come down. We'll give him some pant legs or shorts. I guess you call those short legs to your pants. I'm not sure. But we're going to give him a little chain wallet here coming back. And then of course his feet will be at the bottom. Now what we're going to do after we sketch this, scribble this on, we're going to go back now and give him a chicken leg on his shirt. I really don't know why, but I think that'll be funny. So he's got a chicken leg on his shirt, and of course it's the ground he's standing on. So there's my scribble of a sketch of a character that was inspired by the reference photos I looked at. So now I'm going to grab my brush pen. This is where we actually put the detail in. So his eye is really small, so we're not going to do a whole lot with the eye. We're just going to make it sort of small like that. The crown comes up in waves, so we're going to get a little thicker and push down a little harder as we go making our loops. Then of course his beak here coming up, down on the side, and I call them his goblets. I'm not really sure what they are, and down his side of his head, making up his neck area here. I'll put a little bit more detail around the eye, a couple lines maybe, just scribble some lines in there. And then of course up at the top he's got feathers sticking up here. Then we'll move down to the shirt. You can see part of a sleeve on this side and part of a wing here. And of course we have the other sleeve on this side, going up like this. Like that's good. Now his shirt comes down. And notice I'm pushing down a little harder on making some of these lines for his shirt. And a little thicker line there. His shorts will come down to his short legs. And then back up again. Now we stop here. I'm going to put the chain wallet in a second. But now I'm just going to go ahead with the tail. And notice I'm making thinner lines as I go out to the tips. Like that. I may have it thicker at the bottom. So these are all just basic little shapes we're going to be making for his tail. Adding some more detail in as we go. There we go. That's a pretty good tail feathers for him. Now we're going to put a little belt chain wallet for his on his belt here. So we need to add the belt in like that. Give it a little, maybe a little buckle at the front. Okay, then we could bring this down, making up the rest of his body. Now for his legs, you're just drawing 2 lines coming down. Notice I'm not taking all this time to make it look, you know, real clean. I'm scribbling it in, still not really scribbling, but just placing lines down really lightly. I think that adds to a look of a design a little more. And put the chicken leg on him. Put a little shadowing at the bottom. We'll put some more of that in later. And now we have our rooster. What we want to do from here though is let this ink dry for a second. Then we're going to erase our pencil lines. Always let your ink dry. That's a huge tip to save you trouble in the future. I hope that I will allow it enough time now to dry, but we'll see what happens. I'm using a Pro Ride eraser. I give these out when I go to schools. I love these erasers, so I usually bring erasers for every student that's in my workshop. The Pro is a great, it's from Pentec, but it's a great eraser. I love using this eraser. There's something about it. It's just easy to pick up the graphite from the paper. Now hopefully we've allowed enough time for this to dry, and you can see now I'm going to go back over. I'm being a little careful, watching to see if it smears anywhere. Usually where you have thicker lines, you're going to get some smearing. It takes longer, of course, to dry, so we got to be careful about that. Looks like it's coming off pretty good, so we'll keep on going. Maybe get the rest of this off here. Shaking the whole table as I do it. That's okay. After you get all these lines off and your pencil lines are gone, we should have just an ink version then of our rooster. And with that, what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of color into the rooster. So that'll be our last step that we take in the creation of this character. Now when you're working on children's books or doing any type of work on your own stories, sketching out characters and coming up with the look of characters is really important. Knowing what the characters look like in your head, and that way you can portray that look or that design to the viewer or the reader of your story, right? So there we go. We got all the pencil lines pretty much gone. There's a few still left there, but for the purpose of the video I think we're okay. Now before I start adding any type of color to it, I'm actually going to put a little bit of this in here. This is the warm gray number 2 or 3, let's see, it's number 3 pencil. It comes in shades, not a pencil, what am I saying, it's a marker. But we're adding a little bit of shadow in certain areas to him. We're going to make it so that when we add our color later, this will be behind it. That's the idea. So hopefully it does work. So there we go. We have some shadowing in on our rooster now. And once we have this down, what we'll do is we're going to go back in and we're going to add a little bit more color. This is where the aqua brush comes into play. So we're going to take our watercolor palette here. We're going to set it off to the side a little bit, and we're going to start pulling color. Now this holds water down in the reservoir, so you could pull from this and start putting color on. Now I'm going to test the color out over here to the side a little bit just to see what it's going to look like before I start putting it on the paper. This isn't watercolor paper. It's, you know, obviously it's best to use watercolor paper, but sometimes I like to use regular you know, sheet drawing paper to color on, just because it gives an interesting look to how the color dries. I don't know what it is about it. I like it. I had a sketchbook that I filled up with color, but it wasn't watercolor paper, but I just loved the way that it looked. So we got a little bit of color on the tail. Now we're going to maybe put some color down here on his pants or his shorts. I'm not really sure what those are. But you see how the gray that I put down first now stays underneath the colors that I'm adding, which is what I wanted to happen. I'm very lightly putting on color. I'm not trying to put too much on. I'm adding color to different parts of the picture. So let's say I pull this green up and I let a little bit down here on the shirt. I take a little more green and I slap it up on the tail. I think it's good to spread color out so that you see, even though the pants are supposed to be blue, you see a little bit of that green in the pants somewhere. And I think that's a good idea to do that. It makes when you look at the whatever it is you're looking at or you've created, and you see that color spread out throughout in various places, it draws your eye to those areas, and it makes it so not one area is too thick. Okay, so what we're going to do now is put a little bit of brown in there. The rooster he's going to be primarily this color, but we're not going to stick to that totally. Of course, the wing will be a little lighter, and pull some more color up onto his face. This will be a little darker underneath his beak there. And once we have the light brown put down, we're going to pull a little bit more color out and start adding to the tail. You can see how the watercolor blends. It looks really good, I think, on regular drawing paper. This is about the thickness. It's a little heavier than a copying paper like you use in a copy machine. It's a little thicker than that. So that's pretty good for the tail. And we can add a little more green now to the shirt. We're using colors that complement each other, of course, and so we're trying to make it a bright, nice, colorful character. Why I put a chicken leg on his shirt, I don't know. Notice I'm not using a ton of color either. I'm not coloring in every little part of this. I'm leaving some parts white. Leaving that white really separates the colors well, and it also adds a certain effect to the drawing, like there's more light coming in somewhere or something. But you don't have to do that. If you want to color everything in, it's completely up to you, right? So we're going to put a little more dark in his tail up here, like this. I'm going to blend that in a little bit more. Roosters have very colorful tails, so the more color that you can add and get into it, the better. So now we have primarily everything we need to go ahead now and finish out in this brown color. Notice I'm testing out my colors over here before I start putting them down. I do that just to make sure, I'm on the right track with things. I'm not pulling too much color out. It's not, it's going to blend okay, those sorts of things. So I like to see what it's going to look like before I put it down most of the time. So I'll put a little more brown in the back of his tail coming out this way now, adding to it, separating the wings, fingers on his wing, I should say, I guess. Now we're going to go ahead and pull a little bit more of that color we used earlier down on the legs. See, I'm just putting it on there lightly. I'm not overthinking it. I'm not trying to build a masterpiece here. I'm just a simple little cartoon, right? So we've got pretty much everything we need here. We can add a little bit more to the chicken leg, a little brown in there, and down this way, and maybe a little more at the top for his beak here. And then of course the crown is this deep color, and what we're going to do is add to that now. So here's what we've got. We've got our little rooster. He's all set up, he's good to go, and we finished it up. So we're really pleased with how it looks. I hope you've had a great time, and there we go. We have just designed and created our very own rooster. So that covers a rooster. So who knew that a rooster could be so fun to draw? But as artists today, we have a lot of advantages to our toolkit. We're able to get on Google and find an image and pull that up and get inspiration. Also, remember, art is very subjective, and also art relates to itself, even in the sense that you look at other people's designs and other people's ideas, and you don't steal or borrow, but you get inspired. So you'll see how someone uses a certain color to get a certain effect, a shadowing. Maybe they draw a certain line a certain way, the thickness of a line. But you get these ideas and you pull these certain approaches to art into your toolkit. So everything in art relates to itself in a way for inspiration. So today we looked at that a little bit by considering looking at other people's drawings or ideas of what a rooster character, a character of a rooster would look like. So I hope you had fun today. I hope you learned a lot. Ink is awesome. I love using ink. It's a great medium. So please, if you haven't, again, subscribe to the channel. And until next time, keep drawing.